Benny, we have an American Idol on this show. Literally a hero in America. This man was a performer, had an entire career in music, then changed to be one of the best production studios and companies in the world. Ooh. Please welcome Mark Labriola. Hey. What's up, Mark?
Oh, man. How's it going?
It's good, man. Yeah. It's good. Great to be. Happy birthday. Today's
Thank
your
you
birthday,
very much.
fellow
Happy
Pisces.
birthday.
Yeah.
Happy
You got
birthday.
any big birthday plans?
When you get older, it's just kind of, you almost forget that it's your birthday, and except for everyone around you is like, hey, happy birthday, happy birthday. And so I got 3 kids now, and I'm just like, it's a school day. So I'm like, you know what? I got to get people up, out the door, you know.
Well, thanks for joining us on your
birthday.
birthday.
Yeah, I'm glad to be here.
And I want to dive in. Like, Benny and I know what an NFL tryout looks like. We've been there. We know we could go to any NFL tryout right now and tell you whether they actually want to sign a player from that group or whether or not that any player from that group has a chance in an NFL. Yep. What in the world is it like to audition for American Idol and then be selected?
Ooh. Yeah, so, and just to be clear, I didn't make the top 24.
Right, okay. So you ain't the top 24, but you in there.
Yeah, but out of 120,000 people, I made it to a small group of 98. So that's pretty good.
That's great.
You know? Amazing.
Incredible. Yeah. What was the song that got you in?
So I sang a few, but there was this this 80s song called Tempted by this band called Squeeze. It was kind of an under the radar kind of hit.
Can we get
it was like, I bought a toothbrush, some toothpaste, a flannel for my face, pajamas, a hairbrush, new shoes, and a case.
We're listening to it on the way home today. I know that.
I better find.
Yeah, get it on. Yeah, all right.
There we go.
Exactly. Yeah. You know, it's one of those things where you kind of see something on TV and you kind of have a preconceived idea of what you think it is. And then you go there and it's a completely different story.
We understand that.
You guys know what that is, right? Yeah, it's like you see behind the curtain, you're like, oh, okay. You know,
different.
Exactly.
But like, were you in a long line like they show on TV?
Yeah. So this is. I'm so glad we get to talk about this. You know, you and I have been friends for several years now.
How did you become friends with this guy?
And so it's been a long time since I was on season 9 of American Idol. It was like 2010. So it's like, it was a long time ago. But it was one of those things where as a kid, I'd always dreamed about being a singer, and I actually had a little bit of fame in the Christian music industry. Okay. I was in a band and we got signed and I got to like travel and I'd have songs on the radio and all that kind of stuff. And when the band was breaking up, I was like, crap, I have no skills. Like, I've sung my whole life for a living. Like, what am I going to do, And my dad was a big fan of American Idol, and he was always trying to push me to, like, try out and stuff like that. And, he was the kind of person where it was, like really supportive. Like, hey, he was living in Texas at the time, so he was like, I'll drive up, and I'll wait with you in line and all this. And with the band, no longer in production, I was like, all right, like, what do I have to lose, And I've kind of always tried to live my life, like, with no regrets, I never want to be that Uncle Rico type character, right? Where it's like, I could have thrown a football over them mountains,
Yeah.
And I feel like a lot of people who can sing or have some sort of talent, they think, like, I could be on America's Got Talent, or I could be on The Voice, or I could be on American. You're singing in the shower, like, yeah, I could do that. These guys suck, And so it's kind of one of those moments, and I was at the peak of my age for I was 28 at the time, so it's like that's as old as you can be, like, to be on the show. And so I was like, instead of being the Uncle Rico of like, I could have been on American Idol, I was a good singer. I was like, all right, like, let me go just try and see what it was like. So it was back in the day, it was in Vesco Field, and which is in Power Stadium now. So you guys remember Vesco Stadium?
Our old office.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So we get there at 4 a.m, and there's already 1,000 people in line, just waiting. And so we're out there waiting and waiting and waiting. And there was about 12,000 people who showed up for that audition. And so, we waited. And then what they do is they give you a ticket, like, all right, come back, and then we'll have the big production with Ryan Seacrest and all those other kind of things. And so then you come back the next day once you have your ticket, and then you get in the stadium and they do all the things where they have Ryan Seacrest out on the field, with the cameras, and they make you do the wave and scream and get all excited. And then how they had it set up back then was they had like, I don't know, like maybe like 20 tents on the football field there. And then each tent had like a producer or 2 producers in the tents. And so they can quickly crank through, 12,000 people. I mean, quickly in the sense of like an entire day.
Right.
And so then in each little tent, 20 tents on the field, they had, a block of maybe like 10 or 15 people, right? And then you step forward and you sing for 15, 20 seconds, and then you step back, and then they, rows of 4, they kind of have you go, and then they say, no thanks, move on, or hey, you stay, everybody else go. And so, that's kind of like the first round of it all, where it's like you're out there, you're tons and tons of people, you see the stadium, all the people up there just looking at you, and then I can imagine how heartbreaking it would be is if you get up there, you sing your 10 seconds, and then they're like, no thanks, and you're like, oh man, like
confirm my fears.
Exactly. And so, I stood up, stepped forward, sang my 15 seconds, and then they had the other people go, and then they flagged everybody else on, and then they kept me there, and I was like, oh, and they're like, sing another song,
Ooh, there we go. Here we go.
Like, I was so high I did not recognize the fire burning in her eyes, the chaos that controlled my mind. Oh, kept playing love like it was just a game. Just some little Maroon 5 there.
Yeah, there you go. There you go.
I'm saying pass right now. I'm saying yeah.
Yeah.
I want lessons after this, please.
Yeah.
So that was cool. So then it was like, okay, you get to go to the next round. And so then it was like, oh my gosh, like the hardest part, or at least that first seconds of being able to like show them what you got. It was like, okay, I get the next round. And then from there it was like you go into the tunnel, and then they have another station of some producers there, and you got to start signing paperwork, and that's another thing, right? And I'm sure it's similar with you guys, right? It's like. Do you want to play football for a living, or do you not? And it's like, I'll sign the contract.
Yeah.
Not looking at the fine print.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like, do you want to be on TV or not? And it was like, I'll be on TV.
Where was our contracts class in high school, by the way?
Yeah,
That would have been
exactly.
useful.
That would have been useful, huh? Exactly.
They don't want you to know that.
No, of course.
Exactly. So yeah, and so then it was like, and this is what's a little bit different, right? Because on TV, especially back in the day, it was kind of like, you see all the people, and then you see Simon and Randy and all those guys, and you think that they're there all day just cranking through people. But really what it is you go, once you sign all the paperwork, then you start going through other rounds. So there was like 2 or 3 other rounds before I even got to the TV round,
Wow.
where I was like on TV, like, doing that. And so
Getting famous.
yeah, I mean, it was pretty wild. So anyway, so you go through the rounds, and then they kind of judge you, and there's some rounds where it looks like the TV show, but it's just no-name producers who are talking to each other and looking at you on camera and watching the screens, and then it was like the day, it's like, okay, come back. We had Victoria Beckham as a celebrity judge my season, and it was like, now you're there in a smaller room, with maybe a couple hundred people.
Armpits sweating.
Yeah, it's like, your armpits are sweating, and then and this is the part that I feel kind of bad. They don't do this anymore, but you know how they would have some terrible acts on?
Yeah.
And they would be making fun of them and like whatever. But what I realized then was like, man, these people were told for like 4 rounds, like, hey, you're good. You're going to go to the next round.
Oh, no.
And then they get in front of Simon,
really
and he
messed up.
just like,
And then,
completely
man,
roast them. And it's like, oh.
She bang. She
Yeah,
bang.
exactly.
That's
Exactly. So that was
So it worked for production purposes, right? We all remember it,
Well,
but
that's the thing is
but you saw them believe in that moment.
Yeah, and it's one of those things where I think that when you see behind the curtain, then you start to realize where it's like they're really trying to sell Coke and Ford, and then it's like building a cast. And once I made it to Hollywood, then it was like really like apparent of like what was kind of like happening, to some extent. And so, but yeah, so then it was like my turn to go up and sing in front of the producers and stuff. And I feel fortunate because, so there's 120,000 people that tried out that season, and then only maybe like 300 or so make it to Hollywood. And so a lot of times what you see on TV, right, is just someone busting out the door with their golden ticket to Hollywood. And for me, it was like, if you Google my name, it's like the first thing that shows up, me, like Mark Labriola in Denver, Colorado, and kind of they do a little story on me, a little behind the scenes, and then show me singing and stuff. And so I feel like blessed because I could have been like, oh yeah, I was on American Idol, and then they just like, oh, there's my clip of me busting out of the door, like
Right.
not really singing or whatever. And so that was really cool. But get out there, and I think I had a little bit of a self-awareness, about this whole idea of them building a cast. And so it was kind of like, who am I going to be like within this cast? And so I was thinking like, well, I'm not going to be like the washboard abs, like, Thor looking dude,
Left us a long time ago, brother.
Yeah.
I'm working on that still.
Yeah. And so I was like, all right, I think every cast needs like the chubby funny guy, right? And so I was already the chubby funny guy, so I was like, all right, I'm just going to lean into that, And so I kind of went in there and again, if you see the audition, right, I'm kind of goofy and stuff. And, for me is I had a really interesting story. So it gets even crazier as far as like my childhood. I mean, I was kidnapped when I was 4 and we were on the run for 6 years. And my dad found me when in 91 and then I ran away from home when I was 16 and I lived in a foster home until I graduated high school. So I had this sensational story, that obviously that benefits you too. It's like, okay, if you can sing and we have an interesting story, it's like you're gonna be on TV. But one of the hard things for me is that I'd kind of restored my relationships with my family. I had felt like in my early 20s that like when you start becoming a man, it's like you start to think about the things that happened to you or maybe the way that your parents were or whatever that was. And maybe you can have a little bit more grace or forgiveness for those situations or understand things a little bit better. And so I started to try to extend olive branches and like forgive people in my family and things like that. And so then when I got on American Idol, they really wanted me to like throw some people under the bus, like just make it a real
That's
hard.
tough.
Yeah, it was
That's
very
tough.
tough.
How much do you hate so-and-so? Yeah.
And if you see Simon, he was like, tell us something interesting about yourself, right? And obviously if I open up with like, oh, I was kidnapped, and they'd be like, that's interesting. But I'm like, I like cheese, And so he was really trying to dig into my story, And so I was just trying to be gracious because it's like I know there's like 35 million people watching this right now.
Yeah, I'm not going to air out my business on national television.
Exactly.
Well, you chose not to.
I chose not to. Yeah, exactly.
Good choice by you. I mean, that's strong. I mean,
yeah. And so and two, I think about it, and if I would have done that, I think that probably would have hurt, like the relationship I was rebuilding with my dad and my mom and all those kind of things. And that's gone. I mean, that's over, like my 15 minutes is done, but those people are still in my life and things like that. And so, yeah, it was kind of making that decision like, okay, should I choose fame and fortune and like really railroad these people so that I can have this, great sensational story, or should I try to handle this with kid gloves?
Have you always been a long-term thinker? I mean, because that takes a lot of like self-awareness in the moment, especially with cameras on you, fame upon you.
Yeah.
You're becoming famous. Like, have you always been a long-term thinker like that?
I mean, I don't know. I think I had some maturity in my life. I was 28. I had a kid, my first kid. I'd been married for a few years. I think that it was probably a little bit of that, just having some maturity, and some responsibility and thinking. But I don't think I really sat there and pondered it like, it was like that gut feeling. I think more than anything, it was like, go with your gut, It's like, okay, I don't feel like this is right, so I'm going to just go with my gut,
Yeah.
So you get through American Idol, you don't make it to the final one, you don't get your deal, and then you decided to start what now is one of the best production companies in the entire world. What was that bridge you crossed?
Well, so it was like a journey for me. So when American Idol, so I got my golden ticket. I made it to Hollywood.
I love the golden ticket. I love that you say that.
I love it. New Willy Wonka's got some songs. I ain't a singer, but I'm singing at the car with the kids.
Yeah.
Wonka, shout out to Wonka.
I
and
got the
everybody
golden
made that.
ticket.
Yeah. Hey.
You better
Get
watch.
You got me
on
working
that
on my voice right now.
Get you on the voice.
Yeah.
So I make it out. So I get to Hollywood. I'm there for a few weeks, all expense paid trip, and you're around all these other people who are excited and stuff like that. And Hollywood, Ellen DeGeneres was our celebrity judge, and so, I'm making it past a few rounds in Hollywood, and then I get to the group rounds, and I you have to sing and dance, and it's just a little bit stuff that just was out of my like comfort zone, and I just wasn't a good fit, and I get cut. And for me, I was like, all right, I'm 28. And it was kind of embarrassing in some ways, like you get cut. I'm there crying, like hugging Ryan Seacrest, this is it. And I'm in my hotel room, and I was devastated, I mean, I think I had in my mind, I was like, oh, this is it. It's like I had a little bit of that success in this Christian rock band, but it wasn't as mainstream and, as visible as American Idol. And so I was thinking, okay, this is what I was made for. This is what I was supposed to do, And when that fell apart, I was devastated. I was heartbroken. I'm in the hotel room crying and like just
eating cheese.
Yeah, just eating cheese, exactly. And I was thinking like my life's over, like I'm washed up. I got nothing, And then it was a slow journey, I think, of, self-discovery and hard work and making the best of every situation and staying positive. And, when I drop my kids off to school, I tell them every morning, I say, be a leader, make a difference, stand up for what is right, help those who can't help themselves, make the best of every situation, stay positive. You're awesome, you're awesome, you're awesome. I kick them out, and so I feel like essentially I was working a job at the Cherry Creek Apple store. I was a genius, and talk about pride. Like I quit when I made it on American Idol. I quit. They clapped me out, like, yeah, Mark's leaving. Oh. And then I come back a month later, like, can I get my job back? Like, it's not gonna work out for me. And so I started doing that. And then I had a friend who was a photographer. And I was kind of always around the creative, arts, with music and film and video and all this kind of stuff. And so he was like, hey, I need a video for this thing. Like, do you think you could help out? And I was like, all right, I think I could figure it out. And this was kind of a little bit before YouTube, so I had to like go to the library. I had to like get the Dewey Decibel System. You remember that? And I'm like looking for like video editing, and just trying to like figure it out and learn stuff. And so I kind of started a side hustle. So I was like working a day job, and then nights and weekends I was doing photography and video and kind of just doing that because we really valued like my wife being able to stay home with our kids. Mm-hmm. And so it was kind of like, all right, what do I have to do in order to make sure that, my wife can raise our kids? And so that was just like, all right, side hustle. So I was kind of just doing that. And then I got other opportunities and got promotions and moved on from, Apple and started working for Remax at the world headquarters here in town, and quickly worked my way up through the ranks there, and was, had my own internet show, and like, I was training brokers on how to use tech and all this kind of stuff. And then I became the director of creative media for a real estate tech company here in town. And I was doing that for a few years, and then they had some huge funding not come in, and so I got laid off the first week of January.
Double click on that. What was that like?
Yeah. Well, man, I had no savings. I had no severance, and that was kind of one of those moments where it was going back to that idea of, all right, I can either go get another director job somewhere, or I have this side hustle called Brand Viva Media, and I could go all in on that. And if nothing materializes, I can just go get another job, and I can say, all right, I tried and I did my thing, And so my wife was real supportive. And so we went all in on the Brand Viva Media thing.
How long did it take you to come to that conclusion? Because I feel like, things like that can either happen super fast or they can draw on a little bit. But, you know, you talk about not having any savings and like, how long does it take you to get to that? And you're like, okay, I'm going all in.
Yeah, so I had thought about it that fall. Like it was 2015, the fall of 2015. I was thinking like, I think maybe I should try to go off on my own. But I'm going to play it safe. I'm going to start saving up some money. And then when I have enough money saved, we had 3 kids at this point, mortgage, then I'll take the risk and I'll jump out and do this Brand Viva thing. But then, January 1 hits, they lay off half the company, and I'm like, oh, I better maybe speed things up and get going on this thing.
The universe is like, it's time now.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so it was like, all right, I'm all in, so I'm going to do that. And in the beginning, it was like hustling. It was like, all right, $500 here, $1,500 here, doing all these things. And it really started to shape, I would say, like my philosophy on life during that season. Because, when your back's up against a wall and you're wondering how you're going to pay your mortgage, like, it's like sink or swim. It's like, do I have faith or do I not have faith, And
Did you lean on your faith at that time?
100%, and I think for me, it started to turn into this thing, right, where it was like, all right, bills are coming due, and I'm starting to get anxious and stressed and worried about, when's the next project coming. And then 2 weeks later, someone will call me and they would say, hey, we got this project for like $7,000. Like, can you do it? And it'd be like, oh yeah, like I could totally do it. And then I'd be at peace, like, okay, like, that's cool. And then, it's like, okay, money's running out. Like, I need another project. It gets, and then it was like, it kept happening like that over and over. And then I started to think, like, if 2 weeks earlier, I knew that in 2 weeks someone was going to call me, I would live with more peace and more presence. I'd be more intentional with my kids. I wouldn't be worried and stressed. And so then I started coming up with this idea of like, all right, I need to be present. I need to not worry about tomorrow, and I need to expect the blessing. And that's really the rhythm that I started getting into. And when I started getting into that rhythm, I just started to be more present, and I started to focus on the things that I had at hand, and I was just excellent at those, and then new opportunities would come. And then after a while, it was just rolling, and
here we are.
We have a few employees, and I've worked myself out of all the doing. And
nice view from the office.
I got a nice office in the Denver Tech Center. We have a cool studio out there.
Let's go.
And so, so now my license plate says expect, it's like expect that blessing. I think a lot of people, throughout life, they have these things in their life that they are excited for, or maybe something doesn't work out, or, they're stressed about, relationships with family or friends or whatever that might be. But if you think about life as a constant, rain, storms, and sunshines, and hills and valleys, it's like you need those times in your life that are hard in order to shape and mold you to be a better person. And I think we're all on a journey just to become the best versions of ourselves,
When you look at now as a digital success, a digital and producer with Brand Viva's success, and you talk about those moments that you're on a journey, what do you think keeps people from taking the journey, from taking that next step? What do you think keeps people from expecting the blessing?
I think there's two things probably. One is, I think, fear, and then wanting to have a sense of control.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think anybody's in control, like we're all out of control. We can say that, we can white knuckle, but even somebody who's working a very secure job, it's like, oh, stocks are down, we need to lay off the CEO and get somebody else in here. It's like, all right, how secure was that, And so at some point you have to realize that, like, and this is what I believe that we all have a purpose, like everybody has a purpose, and we're all, we were joking earlier about how, like, we're all just different cast members in a show,
Yeah.
And I think that each one of us is the star of our own show, and that there's a purpose for our life, and on that journey, it's like, how can we make a difference? How can we make an impact? And so I think there's an element of being able to say, all right, like, I'm not in control, and so I need to release that, and be at peace with that. And then also start to think about, and I always tell, like, a lot of young guys, like, who are coming up, it's like, what's the worst, like, especially somebody who's in their early 20s who might even be living with their parents still. I'm like, so what's the worst that's going to happen? Like, you take a risk,
question.
It's like, okay, like, you fail or something like that, and then you still have to live in your mom's basement. Like,
You're already there.
You're already there. It's like, easy move. So a lot of times it's like, what? Just push in, take the risk, take the challenge, because the worst case scenario is probably not that bad.
What are you most thankful for in terms of that journey?
I would say, like, again, I think it solidified my ethos. It's allowed me to encourage a lot of other people. It's allowed me to have a story of hope, You know, I think we're all just looking around us and trying to see, like, is somebody else made it? Is somebody else, you know, like took a risk and did they have success? And so I think, you know, my story is one of those stories of hope and redemption and you know, success. And it's still a journey, you know, and I think that it's one of those things where it's like, you know, always trying to be thankful for what's in front of me, like the here and now, you know, because I have my health, I have my family, I got 3 wonderful kids and a wife of almost 20 years this October.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And so I look at all that and I say, man, I'm blessed, you know, and like there's so many things in my life that I could say are missing, or like, oh, I want more money, or I want a bigger, you know, house, or nicer cars, or like all these other kind of things. But at the end of the day, you know, what really matters is, you know, the ones that you love and the people around you and your health, you know.
I want to move now to your toolbox. Let's open up that toolbox of digital knowledge in a digital age.
Yeah.
What are people missing about today's day and age and the power of video and audio?
I mean, I think the biggest thing is people need to get over their fear about being on camera, you know, and they're too worried about, you know, what they're going to say or how they're going to look. And in today's day and age, like, you have to be present online. I mean, there's so many people who reach out to me about like, oh, let me work with you for this or do this and that. And then I like try to search for them, and they have like one video on YouTube maybe, and like a website that's 10 or 15 years old. I'm just like, how do you expect me to trust you, like, when you have no presence online? Or you want to be on our podcast? We have a show called The Friday Habit, where we you know, interview people who are entrepreneurs or creatives or freelancers, and it's like, how do we spend less time working, you know, in our business and spend more time working on our business? And a lot of people are trying to be on that show, and then I do like a search for them, and I'm like, I can't even find you. Like, why would I have you on my show? But if you were showing up every day, you know, maybe making a video once a week and dropping some knowledge or some wisdom or something like that. And so I think if anybody who has a business or is trying to like develop and network and build relationships, it's like, be present online, because someone's going to search for you, or, you know, and if they can't find anything about you, it's just going to show a lack of availability, and it exudes a lack of trust in my mind.
How do you help them get over FOPO, which is from Michael Gervais, the fear of other people's opinions? I think that is one of the hard things, at least when I was transitioning. I don't know about you, you know, getting online and wanting to speak. I was always worried about, man, what are my friends going to say about me? Are they going to support this? So I think, how do you help people get over the fear of other people's opinions?
Yeah, it's really just getting and doing it. Because the thing is this, is that everybody is in the same boat as you, right? And so then now if you take the risk and you take the leap and do that thing, now they're thinking like, oh man, that's crazy. Like, I could never do that. Because we're all worried about what people think about us, you know? Even me, it's like, I'm used to being in front of a camera and on a mic and things like that, but I'm self-conscious about, okay, like, am I going to say something stupid? Am I going to say the word like too much? Or, you know, like these crutch words when you're listening to your podcast, you're like, dang it, I can't believe I keep saying that word over and over, you know? And so it's like, we all have those things. And so really what is going to set you apart from everybody else is you pushing through your fears and work on the other side. I heard this a long time ago, this idea, it's called the reversal of desire, right? Is that our natural inclination as humans, right, is to protect ourselves, like our ego and our emotions, and we're always trying to protect ourselves. And so whenever there's a situation that calls for risk, we get fearful, and so then we don't do those things. But if we start thinking about what's the reversal of our desire, so what's the opposite of what we're feeling, and pushing into that, is that's like a little flag to say, hey, I'm feeling like I don't want to get on camera, I don't want to hop on, you know, social media and be vulnerable. Okay, that's a little reminder for me to do that thing that I don't want to do, you know? And then you start gauging your life through that, like, okay, man, I don't want to answer the phone because I know I'm going to have this conversation. It's like, you know what, let me answer the phone and push into that awkwardness or push into that difficult thing, and so that I can grow.
Did you ever struggle with that?
You know, for me, as a multiracial kid, I learned quickly not to care of what other people thought. And that's something that, you know, I'm aware of it, you know, in terms of, hey, I want to be a great teammate, But at the end of the day, if I've got that same feeling and desire, I'm not going to let anybody tell me. I've been told my whole life, you know, you're not this, you're not that. Nobody believed me at any point along the way. So I'm not going to start waiting for somebody to believe me now. So I just think I had a different experience like that as a biracial child. You know, growing up is like, all right, I'm tired of you, and I'm tired of you, so I'm going, right? And I'm going to the barber shop. You know what I mean? All right, so go ahead, get out of here. But I want to. One of the things I want to bring this to people, Mark, because you made a choice that is one of the many reasons why I love you and that we're friends, but a choice that I believe more people have to make, and it's particularly in religion. You were in a Christian rock band. We ain't going to ask you what groupies are like in a Christian rock band, but we know there are some. You are a devout man in faith, and you and I have a different religion. And I'm sure for many people, they may feel with whatever comes to their way or whatever somebody says, like, I don't want to take a part of this. I don't want to be like that. That's against my morals. But you push into people different than you. Teach others how to do that. How have you, as a strong Christian man who expects his blessings, who has a family, how have you leaned in with a black Muslim friend or with anybody of another religion in faith?
I feel like I've always come from a place of love. You know, in the Bible, it talks about how the only true religion is loving God with all your heart, soul, and mind, and loving your neighbor as yourself. Right? So that's what Jesus said. He just said that. And so in my mind, I'm like, all right, how can I make a difference? And I think it's just like loving those around me. And I can have different opinion, I can vote differently, but at the end of the day, like I can still love somebody, for who they are. And
what's the action though? Because we hear that, right? I mean, and people are there's a megachurch that just said that black people were supposed to be slaves and that, slavery is a part of Christianity. Like, he's reading the same book as you, bro, right? So
I know.
So where's the disconnect?
I don't know. I mean, I think that's a good question. Because I hear you. There's hypocrites in every aspect of life. Yeah, exactly. Every religion, every aspect of life. And I have a unique situation, I mean, the way that I grew up, the situation that I was put in. And I think that God just, set me aside for his purposes. And I don't know really. All I know is that I feel complete, when I'm loving people that are different from me, and that
is that saying hi? Is that inviting them to breakfast?
I think it's being around people and being open-minded, open-hearted, and knowing that we're all on a journey and that we're all the same, and that that the only thing that's going to really make a difference in someone's life is if we truly are kind and compassionate and loving. It's like my father-in-law is Muslim. My wife is half Iranian. And, he said something to me recently. He's like, I love you so much because, like, you don't judge me, because our family's Christian. And obviously, like, there's a difference there with, Christian and Muslim religions.
Not if you love them, though, right? I mean, that's the thing. That's what you're bridging right there.
Yeah, exactly.
So maybe love isn't judging that person.
It's not judging, right? And it's not I'm right, you're wrong, even though we might have differences of opinions. But it's like, okay, how can I see like where you're coming from? And then each person has a multifaceted. There's just a lot complexities that make up. And it's like, for me just to instantly tell you this is why you're wrong and this is how you can be right, I mean, that just pushes people away, And so it's more of like a long game. I think about it as it's not me just trying to get in there quickly and tell people how they're wrong and how they can be fixed. But it's like, all right, like it's not my job to change somebody. It's God's job. And so if I can just go into a situation and just love someone unconditionally, then I'm going to let God do his work, I
respect that. Mark, with you being open-minded, with you being a Christian, how does that show up as a leader in your company? And how do you show up, different views, different beliefs, but how does that show up in terms of running a company?
Yeah, obviously you have to be a little more agnostic at times, because we got all sorts of clients and customers and people who are atheists and people who are agnostic or, Christians, whatever it is. But again, I feel like when you lead with love, you're kind of leaving like your team aside, and then you're just you're kind of like in a universal place of like being able to accept people and love people for who they are. Now I might have a team, you know, but I think that everyone can be on the team of love, you know, and I think that in a company, I just as a leader, it's like, okay, how can I be the best version of myself? Because when I'm being the best version of myself, then I can show up for my employees and I can show up and make an impact positively in my clients' lives and really kind of push into the things that I feel called to as far as just leaving this world a better place, you know.
Last one for me is it's interesting to think about how musicians or like a singer and an athlete are similar in that, you know, we talk to young athletes, you talk to young singers and performers, and we'll tell them, we just had a friend of ours say, look, you're going to be an athlete, not an athlete longer than you're going to be, you know, an athlete. What's your advice to aspiring singers, not just in terms of the craft and the business, but to have that wider view of you can be a singer and a business owner. You can love to sing, and that may not be the only route for you to success and to the blessings God has for you. What's your advice to aspiring singers?
Yeah, you know, I feel that in the same way that an athlete kind of has an expiration date in some ways, a singer does too. If this was the 70s, you know, or 80s, there's some ugly dudes who were like old, who were like successful musicians, you know, but it's like nowadays it's just not likely. Right. And so it kind of goes back to that idea of living without regrets, right? If like I tell my son, he's 16, he wants to be a drummer. And I say, listen, I want you to pursue that dream. If you want to do that, like you be the best drummer that you possibly can be. But the most important things in life are family and friends. And if you neglect those things to pursue those dreams, you're going to wake up one day 40 years old with no family and no friends, and you're going to be like, what did I do with my life, you know? And I think having kids is a huge blessing, and it's one of the greatest things that we can do with our lives. And so I just always want to encourage people to say, pursue your dreams, give it all you got. You know, and if things don't work out the way that you think, start focusing on the things that matter. I look at a family, it's kind of like a 401k plan, right? It's like when you're young, man, I don't want to put money in there. Like, I want all my money so I can spend it, you know? Yeah. But when you start doing that, then you wake up and you're like, hey, man, I'm glad I put that money away. Yeah. And I think kids are kind of like the same way. It's like, you know, oh, I want to be able to go out and like, you know, party and do all this stuff. I don't want to have to like deal with kids and all this stuff. But then when you get older, you're like, man, I'm really glad that I did that. I'm glad I invested in that, you know? And so I think for someone who's young and coming up, it's like, yeah, pursue your dreams with all your heart, you know, and really give it the college try, because then you can look back and say, all right, like I tried and it didn't work out, right? Like I tried to make it on American Idol and I made it so close, but I didn't make the top 24 and was on the weekly show. But I can look back and say, yeah, I did. I gave it all I got, you know, and I can have peace with that. And then now it's like I can look at my family and just be like, man, I'm growing up the next generation, and I'm being able to speak truth into these young people's lives who then can go make an impact in other people's lives, and that can keep going, you know, because especially in the music industry and especially with sports too, it's like no one's going to remember you in like 10, 15 years. It's like, but you know what, in 10 or 15 years, if you have a family, man, they're going to remember you.
Absolutely.
They're going to go on, and then you might be able to make an impact in your grandkids' lives and your great-grandkids' lives, and like that's a legacy.
Absolutely.
You know? And so I think if you get those things, if you get the fame and the fortune, and we see this, right? So many people committing suicide or just having, it's like they're hopeless. And it's like, man, all this fame and fortune, I think without God and without like a good family is worthless, you know? And so it's like, how can I focus on these things? And then all those other things will come. You know, in the Bible, it says, seek first the kingdom of God, and then all these things will be added unto you, you know? And so I don't know. That's my advice.
That's a great way to end, man. Beautiful perspective. Thank you.
Mark Labriola, Brand Viva CEO and founder and former American Idol contestant. Thank you so much, brother, and happy birthday.
Yeah, thank
Happy
you so
birthday,
much.
bro.
I appreciate it. It was awesome being here. So.
Awesome.